JLR investigates covering the Trump failed assassination attempt. Ryan Wesley Routh, right here. Ryan Wesley Routh. And some new information is out, folks, about this guy. In particular, his ties to Ukraine, and working with the Ukrainian government in the past. The state attorney's office down there in Palm Beach County indicated to Brian Enton with News Nation that this is going to be a federal case, not a state case. So the state is passing this over to the feds, and I think there's something very, very big when it comes to this case, possibly with another government involved here. The financing and the recruitment and his ties with the Ukrainians. I want to share this clip by News Nation. Brian Enton, boots on the ground in front of Trump's golf course, talking to the state attorney, sharing that they're not going to prosecute this guy on the state level. It's going to the feds. And you know when the feds take a case, it's big, folks. It's big. So I want to share this with you, and then we'll further discuss. Check it out.
I'm Brian Enton, joined by Natasha Zuves. I am live right now outside the Trump International Golf Course in West Palm Beach, Florida, where the former president had now a second assassination attempt against him. It was just 9 weeks ago. He was shot in Butler, Pennsylvania, and now today we have another gunman in custody who the FBI says attempted to assassinate former President Trump. We're joined now by Palm Beach County State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg. He is the state attorney in this area where this attempted assassination happened. You may see him on our air quite a bit, providing analysis, but he's joining us in a different role now. He is actually the top law enforcement official in Palm Beach County and very much part of this investigation. So we appreciate you joining us, Dave. First of all, through our law enforcement sources, we've confirmed that the gunman is a man named Ryan Wesley Routh, that there's a previous charge involving him and a weapon of mass destruction, I believe, from 2022. What more have you been able to learn about this man, Dave?
Brian, good to be with you. He was not on our radar here at the Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office. He's someone who was from North Carolina. He lived in, or maybe even lives now in Hawaii, but he has had some very unusual social media posts, some bizarre posts where he obviously cares very deeply about Ukraine and says that that's good versus evil. At the same time, though, he can't differentiate between how evil it is to try to assassinate someone using AK-47 style weapon. And so, you know, you don't get normal people who do stuff like this. I mean, that's the same guy who then decided to hightail it north from the county, was picked up about 45 minutes north of here. It would be an 8-hour drive to the border. I mean, the whole thing doesn't make much sense, but neither does a lot of the stuff he had been saying. And so he is going to face federal charges. Originally, at the press conference, I had spoken about how my prosecutors were working up the paperwork for warrants and pretrial detention, thinking that perhaps we'd be going first while the federal government was going to decide. But they have since stepped up to say that they're going to be the ones filing the charges. So he will be facing serious federal charges, and we at the state will stand down.
What kind of federal charges do you anticipate, Dave?
No, I don't know that yet, but the federal government has statutes available to them that are stronger than some of the state statutes. They've got some domestic terrorism statutes. Although, interestingly, domestic terrorism is not its own unique statute under federal law, and that, I think, should change. But they do have statutes that are like that they can invoke. They have weapons charges. They have potential charges when it comes to assassinations of a current and former president, things that are less available to us at the state level. And when the feds want to take a case, you defer to them. And so I think it's in good hands. I don't expect them to get any pretrial release considering the severity of this matter.
And we appreciate you
being
here with us.
Can you elaborate a little more? Oh, I'm sorry, Natasha.
It's
Go
okay.
ahead.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Brian. So you say, we don't get normal people who try to do something like this. In terms of motive, I appreciate you bringing in some of what we were uncovering about his views, his very strong views about Ukraine, the war in Ukraine. What is standing out to you in this moment as one is trying to piece together a motive here?
It is interesting. Someone who can see the difference between good and evil, that Ukraine was fighting for its survival against the tyrannical, Putin regime who invaded them. I mean, good versus evil. But at the same time, you can't determine what's good and evil as far as getting an AK-47 style rifle and trying to kill someone, to try to murder someone. That is, to me, how bizarre this is. Like, it doesn't make sense. You understand the difference between good and evil here, but not over here. And to think that somehow he was going to help Ukraine by assassinating former President Trump, the whole thing is bizarre. But then again, people who are totally normal don't try to commit these types of crimes. That doesn't mean he's legally insane, by the way. The fact that he fled, the fact that he ran off, and thankfully we had a good Samaritan who was able to identify him, and we knew what kind of car he was driving. But the fact that he drove off tells you he knew the difference between right and wrong. And that's why it'll be hard for him to have an insanity defense. So this guy is facing a whole lot of hurt right now.
You mentioned, Dave, North Carolina. When we first got the name and I started searching the name, it tied back to North Carolina. That was the only location that I could find. So do you believe at this point that he actually drove here to Palm Beach County all the way from North Carolina and was intending to speed back to North Carolina?
That could be what had happened. That is a legitimate theory. But then I had heard he was living in Hawaii. I mean, if he had the resources to come from Hawaii, to live in Hawaii, and then to come down here, that probably would make it harder for him to get a public defender, where you have to prove they're indigent. But if he was living in North Carolina at the time and drove down and drove back up, yeah, that could explain a lot. We just don't know yet, Brian. We're still trying to find all the information. And now the federal government is in charge of this investigation and the prosecution. Then I'll be able to speak about this more, because it's not my jurisdiction anymore. It's now the federal government. But I expect that we'll learn more soon. I credit the Sheriff Bradshaw, for having that press conference where he was very open, very transparent about what we knew. And we were remarking how fast, how impressive it was that the media found out about this. I mean, you guys were on top of this just minutes after law enforcement seemed to get it. So you guys have really good sources. I won't ask you who they are, but they're really good.
Yeah, and I think something that maybe people I live around here, so I know, and you and I go way back. I used to work in West Palm, but I think something people don't understand is, if you're watching this around the country, is that, Mar-a-Lago is right here, just a few miles away. The golf course is right here. These are places that the former president frequents. So there are security plans. Sheriff Bradshaw, for example, is very much on a day-to-day basis, every day, involved in the former president's security plan. So it's not like this is some random place where this happened and they weren't prepared and they didn't know how to address it immediately. Just one last question for you, though, Dave. We heard from the sheriff in Martin County where they pulled him over and took him into custody, the alleged gunman, that he was emotionless and that he wasn't talking. Do you know, that was in the beginning, though. It's been hours now. Have you gotten any indication of if he is talking to investigators?
I have not, but if he didn't say anything at the beginning, then he knew enough not to say anything at all. The fact that he had this previous very serious charge against him shows that he's not a newbie to all this. But he apparently is on his way back to Palm Beach County. If he's not here already, he'll be booked, and then the feds will request to keep him behind bars pre-trial. Don't expect him to get a bond. And as you showed the golf course on the screen, it's important, Brian, because you know Palm Beach County. You and I go back a long way. It is interesting how you could, just from the street, walk up through the bushes, and then you'll see people playing on the golf course. The bushes hide the holes on the golf course from the public, but there's a fence. So you could go there in the bushes, put a rifle in between the fence, and try to shoot someone. So credit the Secret Service. They saw this. They were able to find this needle in the haystack and take action right away. And according to reports, the only shot that went off were from the Secret Service, not from the suspect.
Yeah, it's a good point. Very different from what we saw in Butler, Pennsylvania, where it was clearly a failure by the Secret Service. Quite the opposite here. Their plan worked, and they were able to spot this man before anything bad happened. And in terms of the proximity, again, you're right. I mean, you've got Mar-a-Lago close by. It's easy to see in the golf course behind me. And then, by the way, the jail, the Palm Beach County Jail, is right next to the golf course. So this man is going to end up being housed right next to the spot where he tried to kill the former president. So it's sort of interesting to think about. Dave Ehrenberg, we appreciate you as always. Thank you so much.
Who is this guy right here? How did he get to Palm Beach County, Florida? Who is he working with? Or do you think he's working alone? Who financed this guy? Who got this guy the weapon? What's going on? How did he even get a weapon with an extensive criminal history? His criminal history is like miles long. How in the world was he able to get a weapon like that? What in the world is going on here, folks? Hopefully the feds look deeply, but a lot of people don't even trust the FBI. We're covering this case extensively. When new and more information comes out about this guy or this failed assassination attempt, you'll hear it here on JLR Investigates. Close call, another close call again, folks. Another close call. Something's fishy here with this. Boots on the ground. JLR Investigates covering this case. We'll talk soon. Stay tuned.